Well, first of all, I wanted to tell you that I dressed up for you in my best Silicon Valley. Like I have a black hoodie on and I have my wireless earbuds. And so I just,
Wow.
So hi guys, welcome. Welcome to the Creative Podcast. This will be one of many posts that I'm going to be putting out around Web3 and crypto and NFT conversations that I'm going to be posting and putting out on the regular going forward. Today we're going to talk about the big news that's been in the press the last week and a half or so, which is FTX in the Web3 space. Today we're talking about what are all the headlines about, what is FTX, who is Samuel Bankman, and talk about the whole downfall. I'm grateful, very grateful today to have Emily Tang, and Emily is a sophomore at trustee scholar at USC, pursuing business science in finance, minor in blockchain technology, avid crypto enthusiast, serves as vice president and director of marketing at blockchain at USC, for which I'm a proud committee member as well. Emily, I just wanted to thank you for taking the time. I know you have a very busy schedule, so I'm really grateful for you to be here today and talk about this. How was that for an intro? Did I leave anything out? Do you want to share anything else?
That was quite a stellar intro. Thank you so much, Vince.
Oh,
Yeah, we
cool,
we
cool.
love Vince. He's
Uh,
he's one of our most prized committee members, and he's also a fantastic photographer.
uh,
So he's done like a lot of tons of great work for blockchain at USC, and we're so grateful to have him.
you guys are an amazing crowd, and I'm very grateful to you. And you guys have been really open and generous. And thank you. You're very kind. And I wanted to get into it, but before I get into all this, I don't know if you saw any news today, but I wanted to share this with you. Elizabeth Holmes sentenced to more than 11 years in prison on Friday following her conviction in January for defrauding investors while running Theranos.
Wow, I
Isn't
heard.
that crazy?
Yeah, now imagine that skill applied to applied to Sam, Mr. Sam's behalf.
Oh, I know. So let's get into it. And I want to kind of bridge the gap between your audience and explaining this, and also people that are reading the headlines and maybe don't really know what's going on, right? So they're hearing about
Yeah.
it and like, what's the big deal? So what is FTX?
Yes. So FTX by itself is an exchange, a crypto exchange. And so basically, I think to start off, let's talk a little bit about SBF himself. So SBF basically comes from a background. He's a former Jane Street trader. So he did that before getting into the crypto industry. I think he's also an MIT grad. So super smart cookie background, very clean, apparently, at the beginning at least. Seems to be like a very, as they call him, moppy haired, ordinary looking guy. So
Yeah.
yeah, uh, quite deceiving though, I suppose. So his first venture, his first venture was Alameda Research. So that is a crypto hedge fund that engages in crypto ventures. And so a lot of people are kind of curious as to how SBF acquired the funding necessary to start Alameda Research.
Wow.
And
Okay.
so yeah, so this was actually kind of interesting. While he was working in Jane Street, he actually engaged in Bitcoin arbitrage. And so what that means is he bought for cheap in the US and then he actually ended up selling it for way more expensive in Japan. Um,
Wow.
and so after, yeah, I think at one point he was like making 25 mil, like, I think like a day. It was just like an extremely large number. So he was definitely getting like a lot of stacked funding. And
Hmm.
I suppose that added to his ego. So, after Alameda Research took off, SBF really embarked on his journey to build a leading crypto exchange. So this attracted a lot of really top name institutions to be his venture backers, and this exchange is the infamous FTX. And so a lot of institutions and celebrities backed SBF, names like Tom Brady, Leonardo DiCaprio, Steph Curry. and also Mr. Wonderful or Kevin O'Leary is a big fan of SBF.
Wow, that's crazy. And so the beginning of it, because let's talk about the downfall, the beginnings of the downfall. And so am I understanding this correctly in that there was an evaluation of the company and the people that were evaluating it basically were like, there's no there? Is that kind of how it came about?
Yeah, so that's definitely one of the straw on the camel's back. I think that actually, in order to understand the downfall, it's important to analyze what crypto is as a whole. So there is one really big blaring problem in crypto, and this is an industry-wide fundamental problem, which is that cryptocurrencies are fundamentally traded on non-regulated exchanges because crypto tokens and coins cannot be classified clearly as securities. So this is the biggest issue that kind of led to the whole downfall, I'd say, because of the lack of regulatory clarity. Like, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to have regulatory clarity, because it makes it a lot easier for exchange operators to be able to handle their clients' assets in a similar way that banks do. Right. FTX is no exception, although SBF did try to paint himself as very a person with integrity and high professionalism. So a little bit more on like the historical context. During the broad-based sell-off in June, that was triggered by the Fed's interest rate hiking in response to inflation, Alameda Research, which is the hedge fund that I was talking about earlier, was facing a really big chance of failure due to a lack of being careful, really, and due to a lot of reckless leverage that they engaged in, like excessive borrowing, because several of its institutional lenders like BlockFi and Voyager themselves were under really big redemption pressures. And so the thing is, if these creditors pushed ahead with their claims against Alameda, then the latter would have instantly collapsed. So in desperation, SBF effectively moved, he says, FTX's client asset and funds to really prop up BlockFi, Voyager, and Alameda Research directly. So kind of the whole downfall started because of this lack of regulation, and that really led to the big issue that we're seeing in the headlines now, right? Which is, in short, much of FTX's client funds have already left the exchange without their knowing, which kind of sowed the seed of disaster. And yeah, if there's like a key takeaway, it would be that the fundamental crack in the foundation of crypto is that exchanges can move clients' assets just like banks can move your deposits. But the thing is, banks are regulated and most crypto exchanges are not.
So let's make the distinction between you and I that are pushing Bitcoin back and forth. The purpose of that, and because we like the non-regulation of that, is because we're not relying on third party. But if you're talking about an exchange, there's room for abuse if there's not regulation. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, because a lot of what SBF did was effectively find like a ton of loopholes. And so like in those loopholes that he found, unregulated entities have a lot of internal loopholes to be exploited. And that's what I was kind of thinking about, how like when FTX filed for bankruptcy and the whole thing going on with like the hack and stuff, because unregulated entities have such internal loopholes, the hole that Alameda Research really revealed or dug out was the result of that firm making that $3 billion personal loan to Sam that was collateralized by FTT tokens that Sam minted. So, yeah, it effectively, I know, effectively speaking, like the biggest issue that we're facing now is that banks can regulate. Banks do regulate, and they do claim to be regulated, and they are regulated. But the thing is, crypto exchanges are not, and as claimed to be regulated entities, they are not doing what regulated exchanges are supposed to do / are not actually regulated themselves. So they're basically just putting up a facade.
Wow, that's amazing. And so I seeing that on the same day that he files bankruptcy, there's a hack. I mean, that's almost like you can't write that. It's like pretty. I mean, it's almost like a a bad Lifetime movie or something.
Yeah, and there's a lot of also like rumor going on Twitter and stuff. I don't know if you were following, but there's this extremely weird thread that Sam posted on Twitter, that he basically like he basically made like a very bold statement, and then he started tweeting like WHA, and like everyone was really confused, but he actually just spelled out like what happened in a very strange vertical like acronym. And there's a lot of rumor and speculation that the reason why he did that at such strange intervals as well, and like everyone was confused, that confusion was serving as a distraction for him to delete some really incriminating tweets.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Smart
But yeah.
criminal.
Yeah. But I don't know about how smart he is, given the fact that in that one Vox interview that he did with a bunch of DMs, he like literally said some very incriminating stuff about himself that you can't really take back on Twitter
Right.
DMs. I found
Right.
that highly entertaining.
Yeah. Somebody who understands that space and knows that before he even hits a keyboard. You know what I mean? So that's
Yeah.
kind of shocking. Um, uh, and you know, all of this smells so much like Bernie Madoff and Elizabeth Holmes. And I mean, this is like, I know those things, when those people hit the press, the general public had a pretty good sense of it because, you know, most people trade stocks. So they had some familiarity with this. I mean, this is very big, but there's not everybody understands, you know, um, how this works. So they're seeing all these headlines, but I don't think they're really perceiving like how big this is.
Right. I definitely agree. And I also think it's interesting that like um I suppose I'm pretty opinionated in this matter, but I always find it interesting how like how like almost I don't think gullible is the right word, but how willing to believe and how hopeful people are that it's just a hack. And like
Hmm.
even Kevin O'Leary I think was of the belief that, you know, Sam just has extremely, you know, bad luck, or maybe he's making a blip on the radar, and that he's you know, he still has hope left, and or he's the fallen hero. Sam paints himself as a very fallen hero like ideal, which is actually just farce, because he like okay, he literally is just a like he was a smooth criminal, but now he's getting caught, so he's making some very unsmooth moves. Like there's a lot of things that he's saying on public and then deleting that can actually be retrieved. That's not really painting such a good picture for him. But it just amazes me how many people still or want to believe so badly that there was a hack. And like let's say there was a hack, right? But the hole that Alameda Research ended up digging out, right, was that $3 billion personal loan, and now we can see why he couldn't have let go of Alameda, and he had to,
Hmm.
you know, steal FTX's clients' assets to cover it up. So at
Wow.
that scale, I would say that, you know, a hack or a heist shouldn't really surprise anyone, and it is a very convenient excuse to throw in.
Wow. That's crazy. And so as of today, I mean, do people know where he is or what he's doing, or have you heard anything like that?
So as of today, control of all SBF and FTX related businesses have been taken over by other parties. I know that the current CEO of FTX is John Ray the third, who oversaw
Hmm.
Enron's bankruptcy. And I was just reading an article yesterday, and it was saying that like according to what John was saying, this is like the worst case of corruption ever, and it's even worse than Enron's, which made like huge highlights. And so Sam is definitely no longer representative of any of them.
Right.
He's still in the Bahamas, I believe, and it's pretty likely that he's going to be extradited from there to the U.S. for questioning, hopefully put
Wow.
in his
Wow.
place.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
crazy. And do you think he'll do you think he'll try to flee? Is it, do you have a personal opinion as to like how far he'll try to avoid the law?
I well, okay, this is actually a very interesting part. So actually, Sam has had basically like romantic relations with Caroline Ellison, who is his his the CEO of Alameda
Hmm.
Research, who actually in like a lot of interviews and stuff, she like literally said, "Oh, you can just run this with you don't need any high level mathematics in order to actually run a company like, you know, like Alameda." You honestly just can use very basic algebra. Her answers are very strange and like somewhat like extremely childlike, which casts much doubt, in my opinion, on her ability to run to actually like run a company. But like all the balance sheets are like out of whack, and effectively everyone is saying, and I agree with this opinion, that Sam and his cohort of 10 who were like strangely all like romantically involved with each other at some point effectively were just like a bunch of college kids taking everyone's money and just like being kind of hooligans with it. That's like the effectively the way that Sam is seen in the public eye now, which I honestly agree with. Although it's interesting because a lot of media outlets are still trying to portray him as the fallen hero, which is kind of strange to me. But anyways, what I was saying was that Caroline's father has very strong ties to the government, which actually has hinted at a lot of corruption between the US government and FTX. And I believe at one point, I forgot the exact details, but the government was going to, I believe, bail out FTX or help out FTX. And there was literally a very perfect direct square connecting Carolyn and her father, and Sam and FTX. And it's just absolutely insane that like that this stuff still happens. Like, or this stuff can like happen, and it's like it's so crazy for me to be living during a time like this, because I've heard about like all the stuff that went down in the 2008 financial crisis, but I was way too young to remember that. I was still playing with my little stuffed animals back then. But now that I'm like older and I guess I understand a little bit more about how the world works, I think it's actually insane that like I get to witness firsthand like all this like tech like scandal that's going on and how it's really going to shape the whole world and crypto as we know it. Because I know there's like a lot of everyone's kind of freaking out about crypto. Even some of my friends would be like, "Oh, are you're still in crypto? I heard about what happened with FTX. How can you still continue?" And I think that really just shows kind of a gap between understanding, because I think the big issue is not crypto, not like blockchain technology. It is the facade that centralized exchanges try to put up with its regulatory approaches, right? And that's where a lot of solutions in DeFi come to play, because that's like the whole point of DeFi, decentralized finance that does not need to rely on any kind of centralized exchange.
It relies on the transparency.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you could kind of see this in any field, though, when you have a cult of personality, when you have sort of these fans. He sits out there and he has a track record of making money, and people are like, all in, whatever he's doing, sign me up, and they just drink the water. And then even when it goes sideways, they're like, making excuses. And so you could see this in politics, where people are really lacking the ability to judge things for what they are, or look at the facts. There's always this bias because they're fans, you know what I mean? And I can imagine he's really leveraged that, to his advantage, and, left a lot of people holding the bag.
Yeah. And Kevin O'Leary has actually stated that if Sam were to start another venture, he would back him. And I find that kind of astounding, because like for someone with such reputation and esteem, like how could you trust someone like Sam who claims to be such a philanthropist and such a good doer, and has such like a very like good like neighborly philanthropist attitude, and he does something like this? How could you trust him again? He has revealed, it actually kind of saddens me how like I think a lot of people kind of saw him as like the one good person in crypto, the one uncorrupt, with all his things about sustainability and like Solana, and then all the like all the like pledge to donations and things. But all of those have just turned out to be complete scams and just other ways for funneling money back to himself. And it's like it's when hit with this, I definitely understand where the general pessimistic sentiment towards the crypto industry is coming from. I just think that it's directed in people's sentiment should be redirected in towards things like how easy it is to find loopholes in centralized exchanges, rather than crypto as a whole, because I think there is still so much so many use cases for blockchain technology, and there will continue to be. And
Oh yeah.
especially during bear market season, there's a lot of building sentiment. But it's times like these where we got to get through that crypto winter together. And
Yeah.
even though there's a lot of setbacks like those things happening with centralized exchanges, that just further shows the importance of blockchain technology in things like DeFi protocols.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about the good news. The good news, from my perspective, is that when something like this happens, and you have honest, good character personalities in blockchain at USC, you guys can sit back and look at this play out and recognize there's an opportunity to protect community and investors, looking at how something goes sideways like this in such a glorious fashion. So I can imagine that the revelation in vulnerability is an opportunity to shore that up and to build trust after the drama of this has passed a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the things that we do at blockchain at USC, one of our biggest strengths is educating our community. And so we have a lot of discussion nights, speaker events, and obviously no financial advice, but we do give pretty good like alpha at times. Um,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
think one thing that this has done is really bring our community together as a whole, and we can observe together what happens when such a big collapse like this occurs. And I think that at Blockchain at USC, we do our best to give a very well rounded image of everything happening in the crypto space. It would be pretty futile and like not reasonable to, cover up something as big as FTX, which I don't think would be possible given how many how many headlines are going on about how big it's blowing up on Twitter. Um, but also just recognizing the reality of things, right? The current state of affairs, given the economy as a whole, traditional ETF markets have not been doing well. The tech industry has been tanking. Crypto is not doing well. ETH, Bitcoin, you name it, everything is going down, tanking. And however, I think that there is much hope still left because it's times like these where the real projects who have maybe been sidelined during the during the bull market, where a lot of projects have been like increasing, like where all the NFT projects, there's like 80 or like 100 a day popping
Yeah.
out. It's times like these, yeah. It's really times like these during crypto winter where the survivors and the stragglers and those projects that people kind of sidelined before and never really paid attention to. It's times like these where they rise and they really show their utility and value to the general consumer. And it's also times like these where I think it's good to have a little bit of pessimism in things like centralized exchanges, for example, because it just goes to show that everyone that we've seen so far has some kind of problem, some kind of issue, loophole. And this, although it has impacted so many people, from an educational standpoint at least, it is important to view this as another push towards more decentralized protocols as opposed to current centralized ones, which have all been, pardon my French, going to shit.
Yeah. 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 What did you say? Crypto winter?
Crypto winter, yeah. We're
Wow.
going through a big
I'm going to
one.
repeat that until it's nauseating. I love that. Crypto winter.
Yeah.
And it makes total sense. I mean, I see, all my friends that, of my age group that live in sort of traditional finance and fiat currency and stocks and bonds, ever since I've been talking about this, they're like, it's a Ponzi scheme, right? And so when this happens, they're like, see, I told you it was a Ponzi scheme. But that's like saying that, during the economic collapse and meant that there's no real estate market or no stock market. This is a moment that we should look at for what it is, and people should pay for their mistakes, but the space as a whole, I think, is just uh, crazy opportunities to come from this, that we haven't even imagined yet, So it's just almost a matter of education, because people are just, if they don't understand it, they're just dismissing it.
I couldn't agree more. I think that I definitely resonate with your statement. Most of my friends, like on a daily basis, like they'll like see me and they'll be like, "Hey, what's going on with your little crypto thing? Heard it's all
Yeah.
going down. Well, guess you're
Yeah.
gonna have to go back to your 9 to 5 like job."
Yeah.
And I think that it's all in good fun, and
Sure.
I do think it's quite entertaining. But I also do think that though they are right that currently sentiment is not particularly strong, and I don't really have a problem like working a traditional like 9 to 5 job. I think that a lot of things that I learn from like traditional classes, like for example, since I'm doing a finance major, a lot of that is a really good foundation actually for things like in crypto ventures. Since a lot of things that I found within the crypto space is that there's a lot of people who haven't been really doing their research or educated themselves enough on the very traditional concepts that actually play a huge part behind how like DeFi projects, for example, are run, right? And a lot of people do a lot of hand waving, I feel, and they're like, yeah, DeFi is the future, like GameFi, Metaverse, this, that, but they don't really know the fundamental backings behind how it runs. And a lot of times, this lack of knowledge can really lead to disastrous things like the FTX collapse. And my heart really goes out to those people that are affected. But a lot of my friends have actually been telling me that people they know or like family or friends have put a lot of money into FTX without actually knowing anything about it, just because they
Wow.
heard that it's in all the advertisements. Like Leonardo DiCaprio did an ad for it. Like FTX is on like all of those like sporting events. Like it's one of the sponsors, and because it has such a big name, um, it is truly a consumer's economy in which everyone will just see big names and they'll automatically associate big corporation names with trust, which I don't think is always a good thing.
Right.
Because with things like this, right? You like the past couple of months, if someone had told me that FTX was going to collapse, I would have been like, no way. Like, look at how big a name it is. It expands and basically, like, literally has touched effectively every single crypto project we know today. And with such a backing like that, how could it be possible that it could collapse like this? Like, even a couple even like a 1 month ago, I would not have believed that this could possibly happen. But as history apparently now has shown, things can change that fast. So one thing that I would definitely advise, and we try to do a lot at Blockchain at USC, is do your research. And
Yeah.
though you can take advice from your friends and family, at the end of the day, it's about what you are comfortable with. And let's say your friend makes a really lucrative trade, right? And maybe it's into something like a shitcoin. If you don't really like see what the point of that shitcoin is, and if you don't really believe, like if you don't really buy into it or don't understand it, it's not always a wise choice to follow what everyone else is doing, because it might not be in your best interest. And it's always important to educate yourself, because I feel like if a lot of people had more of a solid financial background, or maybe like the solid, just like basic legal background, and had done a lot more research with regarding how murky the waters are around regulation in crypto, I think a lot of people wouldn't have been as quick to jump in to the whole FTX debacle, or have not put as much money into
Yeah. Well said. Well said. I think it's
it.
almost like you know web tours onboarding poorly into web 3, right? It's just like, well, if DiCaprio is like, and then people are investing more that they're not comfortable losing. And whether you're in Vegas or you're trading in Bitcoin, you should never invest more than you're comfortable losing. So this
Yeah.
idea that we're all lemurs running towards this big cash payout is I mean, there are very few winners in that play, that it's not a realistic approach in, any level of investing, so
Yeah.
it's just kind of crazy. And That's incredible. Like you as vice president at Blockchain at USC, you guys had a very successful 2-day conference on campus. It was
Yes.
super eye-opening to me. This conversation about Web 2.5 and, where it merges, sort of the current um, established mindset into, people onboarding into the Web 3 and how that is. I mean, that's such a I feel like there's going to be billions made in that because, if you can get my grandmother to start, buying tokens, that's going to be the next, there's just going to be so much opportunity there. And I think that that was the first time during you guys conference that I heard that conversation. I thought it made total sense. You know,
Right.
it's great to talk about the latest and the cutting edge and the potential, but most people when they reach into their wallet, it's relevant to their day to day needs and understanding. So I'm
Right.
kind of excited to see where that's going to go.
Yeah. And just like kind of adding on to that, with like Web 2.5 transitioning into Web 3 projects and just Web 3 projects in general, I think that we can really take a lot of the things that we've learned from debacles like this one and kind of, there's no like there's no nice way of like putting a blanket on it and making it look pretty. But on the positive side, we can say that the blockchain industry might have actually reached the point of its incubation in the first place. It's truly addressing what it was designed for, which
Hmm.
is a trustless, right, and transparent regime that will do away with the traps of ill-managed centralized agents, which is really what it was kind of designed for in the first place.
Right.
And I think that DeFi as transactional facilities used by transparently governed DAOs or decentralized autonomous organizations, they're going to be the future of Web3 finance, in my view. And I think there's a lot of founders and builders who dedicate themselves to the innovation and solutions in this right direction. And one thing I always think about is one of the protocols I worked with over the summer called Inc. Finance, which is founded by TradFi veterans and established fintech engineers with that background from that Web 2 world that is so important to have as a toolkit before going into Web 3. And so projects like these make deliberate efforts to address transparency and competence in financial management on chain. And the tools that platforms like these offer really bring to the crypto space the guardrails and financial knowledge that are urgently needed to prevent disasters like FTX, all in a very digestible way for the average person who might not have such knowledge or learned such things in school.
Hmm. That's crazy. Yeah, that's exciting. It seems like really exciting right now, despite this, like, because people, the hype of everybody has stepped back, everybody, what did I hear? Somebody was saying something that, the ape NFTs were like our generation of Ed Hardy. You have such a saturation of something that for so long, there's just no way that it could sustain itself. You know what I mean? And so
Right.
we just, in so many different forms, forget about Web 3. We see this same kind of patterns play out in all kinds of industries, where you have these saturation points and they just can't sustain themselves.
Right. Definitely. And I think that there has been a bubble in the crypto space for a very long time. Honestly, maybe even since 2020 with DeFi summer. But
Hmm.
this bubble has popped and it has popped big time. Like it has made quite a splash. And it will definitely take a very long time before all that like uh, soaps and suds can rise to form a tiny small bubble again.
Yeah.
But the good thing about crashes like these and bubbles popping is that they expose kind of the dirt and grime underneath that has been collecting after all these years. And I think that it has definitely shown that centralized exchanges are extremely unsustainable and that shifts in them need to be made towards more decentralized regimes like decentralized finance.
Hmm. Hmm. That's crazy. That's crazy. Um, Emily, really appreciate your time. This is so fun. I really appreciate your educated point of view on this. It's really very helpful. And where are you on social if anybody wanted to find you?
I'm on Twitter. My Twitter username is a little hard to pronounce. So should I drop it or I can
You
spell
could
it
just
out?
say it. I'll put it in the show notes. I'll put all your links in the show
Okay,
notes.
it's like 0x and then it's like otaku, which is an anime an anime term, and then it has WU after
Oh, I
that.
love it. That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Really, really, really appreciate your time today. This is so fun. I know you have a full plate, and so I'm grateful for your time. And I look forward to seeing you at the next committee meeting.
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me, Vince.
Of course, anytime, anytime. We'll talk.